Hello, and welcome to another one of our discussions, regular Friday discussions of essays and speeches by Dr. Leonard Peikoff. Today, most appropriately, just away from Christmas, we are talking about Leonard Peikoff's short essay, Why Christmas Should Be More Commercial. Um, uh, the argument that Dr. Peikoff makes here is a delightful argument that all the best things about Christmas are, in fact, not Christianity, or Christianity is not the origin for them. Actually, it's the modern capitalistic era that has produced what we call Christmas. And there's much to say about that. The pagan holiday that was called Saturnalia by the ancient Romans was celebrated in December by pagan Romans for many centuries. It was a party atmosphere. There was gift giving. Children and slaves were allowed to sort of run free. Romans loved gambling, for example, ancient Romans, but slaves and children could not gamble except on Saturnalia. Gifts were given. It was a time for gift giving. Roman temples were adorned with pine branches. The wreath itself is, of course, of Roman origin, so a pine wreath celebrating Saturnalia is exactly what goes back to this Roman pagan holiday that was celebrated in December, which was a party atmosphere, a gift-giving atmosphere, an atmosphere that focused on the freedom and happiness of children. And that's basically where we get the idea of Christmas. More than that, Bible scholars have pointed out repeatedly that we have from Christian literature really no good indication of when in the year Jesus was actually born, his birthday lands. There are some scholars who say if it happened in spring. Though if there are scholars who go out on this, they say Jesus was probably more likely born in spring. They have some interesting arguments for that. But leaving even that aside, why then was December 25th chosen? Well, it lands very, very close to the winter solstice. And of course, for ancient pagans, the equinoxes and the solstices were of enormous religious importance. In the case of the solstice, it marks the turnaround, if you will, all the way up from fall, all the way through fall. The days get shorter and shorter and shorter until we get to the shortest day of the year, around December 20th. And thereafter, the days start getting longer. And because that was the moment when the days start getting longer, that was regarded as the annual birthday, you see, of the sun and sun gods. So sun gods traditionally had their birthdays around the winter solstice. And at the time that Christianity was adopted, the leading competitor religion in the Roman world was the worship of the sun god Sol Invictus, who, of course, celebrated his birthday, the invincible sun, you see. Who, of course, celebrated his birthday on the winter solstice, right in the midst of Saturnalia, in fact. And so the Christians, for all of these reasons, sort of adopted and took over what was a pagan holiday. And the Roman Catholic Church, as usual, and the Eastern Orthodox Church continued that even after the two churches had a schism nine centuries later. They continued to have some Christmas celebrations that were very much pagan in their origins. Come the Reformation, the time of the Reformation, in the 1500s, in the 16th century, there was an extreme back to basics movement. And these Protestants were reading the Bible and taking everything from the Bible, and they fully recognized the pagan aspects of Christmas. For example, the Christmas tree was a pagan tradition that had continued from pre-Christian times. Germans from time immemorial would bring in evergreen trees because, you see, they were green. These pine trees were green through the winter, and they were a symbol of life enduring through winter, and so a symbol of fertility that endures even at the time of the winter solstice. And so they would use pine trees. They would light up pine trees with candles from time immemorial. Lights, trees, all of the decorations that we sort of consider traditional Christmas decorations had pre-Christian origins, and these Protestants didn't like it. They didn't like partying, they didn't like dancing, they didn't like drinking, and in general, our Protestant, you know what they did is they went through all the churches too, and they when the Protestant Reformation took over, they stripped all the art, all that beautiful Christian art that you'll find in Catholic and Orthodox churches. They stripped them bare. Those were graven images in violation of the Jewish commandments, and therefore they had to be stripped away. And so these plain, austere churches replaced all the candles, statues, and stained glass that you'll find in older churches. And the extreme forms of these Protestants brooked no patience whatever with Christmas. And so at first in the United States, and even in England in the 17th century, there really was no Christmas celebration at all. That was wicked, sinful, pagan, and for all the reasons that people still complain about Christmas, in effect. It was really only in the 1800s, in the great age of capitalism, the great age of the Industrial Revolution, and the birth of a vast middle class wanting to celebrate Christmas, that sort of burst through all of these Protestant inhibitions that had existed in America and in England and elsewhere against the celebration of Christmas. And as everyone knows, it was a famous poem in the 19th century, A Visit from St. Nicholas, that was the night before Christmas, that sort of set our idea of what Santa Claus was. It's true there was a St. Nicholas who gave money to the poor way back, way back when, like 1700 years ago. And his feast day his saint's feast day happened to be in December. So he was sort of adopted as sort of this benefactor of Christmas. But he hadn't displaced the meaning of Christmas, if you will, Jesus, in effect, or provided a competition for Jesus in Christmas until this newer tradition of Santa coming and giving gifts to children at Christmas time emerged, with all the bells and whistles, the reindeer, the sleigh, the jolly old guy, etc. Was basically a 19th century creation. And of course, the 19th century, great era of commercial development, invented the Christmas card, invented the Christmas party, invented many of the secondary traditions that we regard as being inseparable with Christmas. The things that we regard as being inseparable with Christmas were either pagan in origin or of recent commercial origin. And, as Ayn Rand herself praised Christmas, just like Leonard Peikoff does. And she focused less on the pagan origins of it, although she was perfectly aware of it. She just loved the idea of Christmas, of gift giving, of benevolence, of saying Merry Christmas. It's not about crying and weeping and suffering and what a vale of tears this world is, and we have to grit our teeth and sort of endure being Christians. No, it's a happy celebration, and it's celebrated by exchanging gifts and throwing parties and putting up these twinkling lights. I myself love Christmas. I have, as you can see behind me, written a book critical of Christian historical claims and the origins of Christianity. I am the furthest thing from a Christian, and yet I love Christmas. I love Christmas lights. My wife and I will go on drives just to see the houses all decorated. We're waiting for everyone to get all the lights up so that in a few days we can just take a drive through our neighborhood to look at the Christmas lights. We love it. Some of these Christmas displays are just amazing. And 9 out of 10 are all about candy canes and Santa Claus and gift giving and reindeers, putting up colorful lights, twinkling lights, and not so much about Jesus. Although there are still manger, setups and stuff that you'll still see. But really, it is a secular celebration, a material celebration. And even as Christmas was getting off underway during the period of the 19th century and capitalism, it did cause some of this Puritan attitude to reassert itself, this anti-materialist attitude to assert itself. I found one quote that I just simply have to share with you. In 1904, Harper's Bazaar magazine, no less, a woman named Margaret Deland, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, said the following, and this was in 1904, recall, quote, 25 years ago, Christmas was not the burden that it is now. There was less haggling and weighing, less quid pro quo, less fatigue of body, less wearing of soul, and most of all, less loading up with the trash. End quote. Harper's Bazaar, 1904. Articles like this led to the creation of organizations, and I'm not exaggerating, organizations such as SPUG, S-P-U-G, really unpleasant name there, SPUG, which stands for the Society for the Prevention of Useless Giving. Many people regarded Christmas as a time of just sheer material excess and useless giving. Too much benevolence, you see. Too much earthly, secular happiness is what this is all about. And no less than people like Teddy Roosevelt, the former president, and J.P. Morgan's daughter joined such organizations. So this complaint about the commercialization of Christmas actually has its roots way back in the Puritan origins of the United States, the Protestant Reformation, in clearing out all this beautiful art and pagan images, and anything that looked like a happy celebration. That was anti-Protestant and certainly anti-Puritan. But those ideas, those values, straight from religion, are the things that are throwing cold water, buckets of cold water, on our earthly celebration of Christmas. I happen to wear my Bah Humbug sweatshirt today. So I'm being a Puritan today, although it does have an adorable little reindeer on there, so it's only half-hearted. But that was the attitude. So that when you hear people today complain about how commercial Christmas is, and how we have to remember the reason for the season, and it being Jesus and so forth, there are still Protestant groups today that absolutely refuse to celebrate Christmas, just as they refuse to celebrate other things of what they regard as a pagan origin, like Halloween, altogether. But most Americans do, and most Americans aren't aware of either the anti-Christian nature of so much of what we celebrate, the pagan origins of so much of what we celebrate, and of course, it comes down to a fundamental aspect of religion. Religion is not about life on earth. Religion is not about being happy. Religion is not about celebrating material existence and material prosperity in the same way that Christmas is today, where it is an overflow of abundant benevolence and happiness and celebration. It's about this world. It's not about the next. Primarily in the way Americans and English people today celebrate Christmas. There really is the best aspect of Christmas is the gift giving, are the beautiful decorations. Most of the Christmas carols that we have, for example, were originally songs with other purposes and lyrics that were simply stolen in the last 200 or 300 years by Christians to be used during Christmas celebrations. And so, of course, Dr. Peikoff and Ayn Rand both very much loved Christmas. Ayn Rand herself would celebrate Christmas, and she'd bring out decorations. She'd love it as an excuse to exchange gifts, and as this is what she called it, an excuse to exchange gifts and throw parties. In other words, she's just waiting for an excuse to give gifts and throw parties. That's how she looked at it. She and her husband would bring out 2 stuffed lions, Oscar and Oswald, their beloved stuffed lions, every Christmas as part of their decoration. And Ayn Rand very much, although she was an atheist, she described her husband as being even more of an atheist than she was. She came from a Jewish background, and yet the O'Connors themselves, Ayn Rand and her husband, celebrated Christmas and loved to celebrate Christmas, as Ayn Rand says, and as an excuse for gift giving and throwing parties. So very much in favor of the commercial aspects of Christmas. I remember one Christmas Eve, I was in Macy's department store in Manhattan, in the 30s there in Midtown Manhattan. They've got the big Macy's store. And if you're ever in Macy's department store on a Christmas, well, before COVID at least, in a Macy's department store on Christmas Eve, just before Christmas, to see the displays, the giant model train displays, the Christmas trees, the lights, the colors, the Santa there. Just consider how Santa has displays to Jesus. That's part of the Christian complaint about the secular celebration of Christmas. How this guy Santa Claus has utterly displaced Jesus in the minds of children when it comes to Christmas time. And of course, is Santa Claus just, like St. Nicholas, just an altruist for the poor, giving it to just the poor or just to everybody? No, no. As Leonard Peikoff and Ayn Rand point out, Santa is a moralist. He's checking who's naughty and who's nice. It's your virtue that will get you the material reward. But more than that, he's in favor of celebrating and gift giving as such earthly happiness, because you see, he's a rotund guy. Santa obviously likes his cookies and milk that we traditionally leave out for him. Santa is a guy who enjoys life and wants to share his joy. That is exactly the opposite of, say, the life renouncing, happiness and pleasure renouncing attitude of Christians, celibate monks living their austere, lives of self-deprivation. Anything like the life of Jesus himself, for example. Jesus, you think of the emaciated, tortured Christ on a cross, surrendering both life and happiness for the sake of less worthy people. He couldn't be more opposite than Santa Claus in his character and nature. It's as though the era of capitalism displaced this anti-material Platonic Jesus with an earthly, happy, jolly, gift-giving, but just gift-giving Santa Claus, full of benevolence and a love of life. It really is all those things that make Christmas non-Christian in its roots, or non-Christian in the way the Protestants had long pointed out, that makes Christmas so wonderful, so wonderful. And really, I have maybe one or two favorite holidays, of which Christmas is definitely one. There is nothing in the world wrong with an atheist, with an advocate of reason, with an advocate of selfishness, celebrating Christmas. Christmas is about selfishness, about the joy of gift giving and gift receiving and that exchange. And it's just for its own sake a celebration of life and life on earth at its best. So I would have to echo both Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff here. Christmas should be more commercial. Christmas should be more material. Christmas should be more about the joy of the season, the happiness of children, the putting on of sparkling lights, the Christmas displays. And really, let's face it, it is commerce that drives this. And commerce that has come up with all of the innovative, wonderful things that we now associate with Christmas, like those model trains that I just mentioned and so forth, giving the English-speaking world an entirely different approach to Christmas than had existed previously. As I say, these were both Dr. Peikoff's and Ayn Rand's, it was even shorter, their notices on Christmas, but both of them were big advocates of Christmas. But the material aspects, the earthly aspects, the celebratory aspects, it is a celebration of life. It is a celebration of prosperity. It is an exchange of values with those you love. And for all those reasons, it is an objectivist holiday. Objectivist holiday as it is celebrated today, far more than it should be some Christmas holiday. They don't deserve the kind of joy and happiness and material celebration that they had long since denounced in their philosophy. We, the lovers of earth, we are the ones who own such a joyous celebration, such a celebration of life. And that's how I concluded. Do we have any questions at all, Dylan?
We do have one question from a Timmy who asks, should we keep calling this Antichrist holiday Christmas?
Well, there's an interesting question. There are a lot of ways in which Christianity has affected our language in ways that, we just sort of accept, and now we have a sort of neutral, secularized term for the idea. But, unlike Easter, Easter is the celebration of, it's the other great important Christmas celebration. It celebrates the resurrection of Jesus. You know, you got Good Friday when Jesus is supposed to have been executed, and then on Sunday we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. And in many ways, that's an even more religiously significant holiday for Christians. And yet, the importance of Easter has sort of been displaced by the importance of Christmas on the modern Christmas calendar. But the name Easter doesn't mention Jesus' resurrection at all. It refers to a pagan goddess of spring, dawn, fertility. Eos was the Greek goddess of the dawn. Eoster, a pagan goddess in Northern Europe. Even the name Easter is not a Christian name, unlike Christmas. Christmas. Um, uh, on the other hand, if that's the name that's been given to it over the years, I see no reason in changing it just simply because there's this word Christ in the name. I am not such a hater of Christianity that I think every time the name, Christ is used, it should be stamped out. So I'm not one of these anti-Christmas warriors who says Happy Holidays as opposed to Merry Christmas. I'll just say Merry Christmas. In much the same way that Ayn Rand was asked on a TV talk show why she uses the phrase "God bless you," and an interviewer said, "God bless you, Ayn Rand," and Ayn Rand responded, "Well, God bless you too," and he was sort of taken aback, and she said, "Now I'm an atheist. I don't literally mean God bless you, but I like what that refers to." In the name of the highest, in the name of the best, in the name of my highest value, I want to wish you good. So it's goodwill. It's goodwill to men. And that is true. There is a part of Christianity that this comes back to, as I say. In my view, the most beautiful bit in the New Testament involved the nativity stories of Jesus, especially the one in Luke, the Christmas story given in Luke. And maybe people are familiar with it from, the Peanuts Christmas special, where Charlie Brown is constantly, he gets that stupid little tree. So Charlie Brown wants to know the real meaning of Christmas. And so at the climax of the, Charlie Brown's Christmas, he says, "Will someone tell me the real meaning of Christmas?" Linus comes out and the spotlight hits him, and he quotes from the beautiful, just in the King James translation, it's particularly beautiful. The translation of a passage from the birth of Jesus in Luke, in which the angels celebrate the birth of Jesus by declaring that it heralds peace on earth and goodwill to all men. And who could be opposed to those things? That is just a love of life. And for it to be symbolized by the birth of a baby is actually kind of poetically beautiful in my mind. As anti-Christian as I am moved. And maybe you're not a human being if you cannot be moved by that kind of assertion of value, of peace and goodwill to men, and that being symbolized by the simple birth of a baby. And so that's the real meaning of Christmas, says Linus. So there are aspects of Christmas that are connected to it. And that connection in itself, I think, is enough to justify calling it Christmas, even though Christianity, in all of its philosophical fundamentals, in all of its particulars, is as far opposed to objectivism or rational philosophy as I can possibly imagine. It's the diametrical opposite in metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, even politics. And so, as anti-Christian as I think a rational secular mind should be, and as objectivists certainly are, I still think that there are elements of the Christmas story in the Bible that are connected enough that, and it has been the better part of 2,000 years we've been calling it that. So I have no problem with the name Christmas. It's part of the tradition. It's part of the candy canes and the reindeer and Santa Claus on his sleigh tradition as much as anything else. More, I think, psychologically in a kid's mind than it is really with the birth of Jesus and a particular sectarian religious viewpoint. Does that answer the question, I hope? Do we have any other questions?
I believe that answers it, and that looks like the only one we have today. But I do want to thank Jeff for his super chat contributions.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to wish everybody who celebrates Christmas a very, very Merry Christmas. and a Happy New Year. This audience is a wonderful audience, and you guys deserve to celebrate with beautiful decorations and exchange of presents and getting together with the people that you love, because that is a real earthly value. It's not about some other dimension. It's not about sacrificing life on earth. It's not about renunciation or giving up. It's not about the sacrifices that we make. No, 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 no. It's about celebrating prosperity, happiness, all the wonderful things about life on earth, bedecking the world that we live in, and exchanging gifts with those we love. A totally selfish, objectivist, rational, earthly thing. And so, Merry Christmas to all of you. And finally, I would just say, if you like this kind of programming, and we are producing a tremendous volume of work here at the Ayn Rand Center UK, please consider becoming a full subscriber. It is a reasonable price for the values that you gain. Just Don Watkins' Communications Bootcamp midweek, something that only paid subscribers can participate in, is worth the money. On weekends, I'll lead seminars on Leonard Peikoff courses where we get in depth on Leonard Peikoff's methodology in a more advanced way. But you can participate in those very workshops. And again, I think that's a tremendous favor. I am a participant myself, so if I say so myself, I think that in itself is worth the price of admission. But we do so much else. We have Harry Binswanger as a regular feature, Lisa Van Dam on parenting as a regular feature. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit share, make comments, and most of all, consider joining the Ayn Rand Center UK if you like this programming. And with that, I'll just wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas.
Right before we leave, we did get a last-minute super chat from
Oh,
Jeff,
cool.
who asked, "What is your favorite Christmas movie?"
Oh, my favorite Christmas movie? Boy, I didn't come prepared. I could give you my favorite Christmas carols, but I'm not sure I could give you my favorite Christmas movie. Um, hmm, that's an interesting one. You know, I do, for all of its altruist implications, the Jimmy Stewart movie, It's a Wonderful Life, I happen to think is a wonderful movie. Yes, Jimmy Stewart contemplates suicide on the eve of Christmas because his life has, through no fault of his own, fallen apart. And so he's on a bridge and considers suicide. And his guardian angel, Clarence, comes to show him what life would be like if he hadn't existed. And at that moment, he realizes that suicide would be the worst thing he could do. I hate to give you the spoiler there, but if you haven't seen It's a Wonderful Life, it is a heartwarming, charming movie. Other films that do focus on faith or mysticism are, you know, the traditional Jesus movies, for example. I do not like. You know, there are aspects of Miracle on 34th Street that I like, but there are some I don't like. In effect, this rational child has to learn to accept the irrational at the end of the day. In the theme, I don't like that kind of theme at all. I do love, however, some of these old Christmas cartoons that were made back in the 60s. Things like How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I am a big fan of that. The Grinch's opposition to Christmas is his hatred of life on Earth. And while it does say that they didn't need the presents and the decorations for the Who's to have Christmas, the Who's still love life, and that's what Christmas is still all about for them. So I actually like that too, even though it focuses on spiritual rather than material aspects, because it is about the spirit of benevolence. It is about a celebration of life on earth and a celebration of those we love. So I do have Christmas themed films that I like, or shows that I like more than others. And so often when they get into the so-called real meaning of Christmas, it goes south. And in that regard, I'd rather watch Die Hard Which, Bruce Willis goes to the Christmas party at Nakatomi Plaza, and there's a terrorist attack, and it's really an action adventure movie about how Bruce Willis defeats these terrorists. But it's set at Christmas time. I'd rather watch that because that's actually more romantic, bootleg romanticism, but a more romantic take on Christmas. Or, even the cute Home Alone movie, the original one, about how a little boy is accidentally left at home over Christmas and single-handedly takes on these two crooks and defeats them because of their own idiocy. That's a much more charming Christmas movie, it seems to me, than some of these back to the real meaning of Christmas sort of films. So thank you for the question, and thank you for the super chat. And now, with that, I'll wish you all a very, very merry and happy Christmas and a happy New Year. Thank you.